boy. This book is bad. Hello, people of Earth and beyond. I'd like to extend a warm welcome today to Big Brother, who is, of course, always watching. For the rest of you, my name is Shannon, and today I'm going to be reviewing Incarceron by Catherine Fisher. Let me start by saying this. I know on this channel that I tend to review books that are not wildly popular or mainstream. Books like Bartimaeus might have a cult following, but they're just, for the most part, not in the public eye. I have no problem reading and reviewing these books because they deserve to be talked about just as much as any other series. They deserve their moment in the limelight. Apparently, Catherine Fisher is a New York Times bestseller, but I've never heard of her before, and I've never heard or seen anyone talk about any of her work. And I really hate to do a negative review of a book that is not widely publicized, and I realize I haven't done an actual negative review on this channel thus far. And I really hate to start with a book that is not super well known, because that author probably already feels like no one likes their stuff. But by the same coin, maybe that's why it's not wildly popular, and I can't lie about my feelings about this book. I also want to briefly address something that might be a little bit of a concern for some of you. I think that this book is technically classified as middle grade. I can't really tell what age the protagonists are. One of them is getting married in the book, so I think they're all pretty much in their late teens. But regardless, it reads kind of like a middle grade book, even though kids of that age can't really connect with these protagonists. But I am of the firm belief that the writing should not suffer based on the age group that it is aimed at. With all of that out of the way, let's dive in. As usual, I'm going to divide this into a non-spoiler section and a spoiler section, and talk about the basic elements of the story, which in this case are just going to be the writing and the characters. Our main boy, Finn, is a prisoner inside Incarceron, which is a giant prison, shockingly enough. I'm not poking fun at the title there. I actually think that the title of this book is one of the few clever things about it. No one ever escapes from Incarceron except for one person who's named Safik, who escaped a long time ago. Finn, however, is convinced that he came from outside because he has vague memories that don't fit in with prison life. Claudia is the daughter of the warden of Incarceron, who is a high-ranking official in the court. He's also the only person who knows where Incarceron is. Claudia has a life of luxury and wealth, and one day she's going to marry the Earl of Sheen, which will actually make her queen someday because the Earl of Sheen is the queen's son. But she is determined to find the entrance to Incarceron. So let's talk about the writing. I have a lot to harp on about the writing, and I'm going to put aside the fact that I think this might have been intended for a younger audience, because as I said before, it really shouldn't affect your style. My main problem really is with the author's writing style. Fisher was not great at giving visuals. Most scenes suffered from white room syndrome, which is where it could basically be taking place in a white room with no furniture, and it would make no difference because she did not give enough description. This made it really confusing and hard for me to stay grounded in the story or know what was going on. Now, to her credit, there are a handful of scenes that were described really well and had some beautiful imagery, but a handful is not enough. It needs to be throughout the entire book. The book also shifted perspectives a lot, and it happened in two ways, and both ways were really, really annoying. First was there would be a scene from either Finn or Claudia's perspective, and it would just cut off abruptly and then go to the other group. The next time we came back to the perspective we were in before, there was a time skip, and I always felt like I missed something. And I need to add that these were not at chapter breaks, which would have made it less annoying. It was the thing you do where you have the 3 dots in the middle of the page that separate it, but it happened way too often. The other way that she changed perspectives was it would be fluid, as in it would change perspectives in the middle of a paragraph. And this was really annoying and confusing, and I didn't like it at all. Just to give you a brief overview of the other writing things that I didn't like before I dive more deeply into them in the spoiler section, the pacing was awful. None of the twists surprised me. And finally, so many things come up that you think are going to be important, and in the end, they're just inconsequential. Moving on to the characters. Almost all of them are horrible. I'm not just talking badly written, although they are. I'm talking a lot of them are horrible people. I can think of exactly 2 characters that I don't completely hate, but I don't love them either. And I'll tell you who they are in the spoiler section. But yeah, most of the characters are just kind of bland, not fleshed out enough, don't really have personalities, or they're just terrible human beings. So that is it for the non-spoiler section, and if you thought I was mad then, just wait. Yeah, I'm about to get into some major spoilers for this book, so if you don't want to know what happens in the middle or in the end, now's your time to sign off. Thanks for tuning in, and I'm sorry that was so negative, but I have strong feelings. So, yeah, bye. For those of you who want to stick around, brace yourselves. The pacing, as I said, is pretty awful. And most of the book drags. It takes Claudia and Jared way too long to figure stuff out. And a lot of this is actually due to the switching back and forth between perspectives, because it takes a long time for one perspective to accomplish anything. And the climax feels very rushed. I feel like Claudia found them in Incarceron way too quickly, and it all just got really fast at the end, and it's not good. Let's talk about the things that are inconsequential in the end. Jared's illness, for one. Like, it's said throughout the book that he's sick, and I expected it to be some kind of, like, big thing. Like, maybe he was going to get better, or maybe it was going to get worse, and it didn't. It didn't do either way. It, like, didn't even need to be there. Evian's entire existence, Evian is an assassin. He's with the Steel Wolves who want to overthrow the Queen. That whole thing almost didn't need to be there. Like, it only came into play in the very end when Evian tried to kill the Queen before killing himself, and he failed killing the Queen, and she was already upset, and it was like, it really would not have made that much of a difference if that plot wasn't there at all. The beast that they have to face, that says it is Incarceron, the one that Safik faced, and it's this big monster thing, and the description of it is actually really cool, and one of the rare moments of really good imagery, but it's wasted because it pops up once, and then they escape from it, and then they never see it again. And that would have been just a really cool villain kind of thing, or even if it's not the main villain, even though it's Incarceron, which is the main villain. My point is, even if facing the beast wasn't like the climax, I still think that more time should have been spent with it, because it was just so cool, for lack of a better word. It was this composite living being of people who had passed away or things that had been forgotten, and it was just really, really a neat concept and really interesting, and I just feel like it was wasted. And a really big thing that came up and then was inconsequential was, in a vision, Finn saw Safik, and they were sitting on a ledge, and Safik told him, this is what you have to open. Like, there was some kind of white light or something, but he was like, the door you have to open is time. And in the end, they press the keys, which I'll talk about later, and press a button on the key, and they're out. And so the opening a door through time thing never gets addressed. Let's talk about the plot twists. Like I said, none of them really surprised me. The main twist wasn't necessarily bad. I just wasn't particularly thrilled by it. There are 3 twists. Okay, twist number 1. Finn is Giles, the missing prince. I wouldn't even call this a twist because it is so blatantly obvious from the beginning. It is not subtle at all. Finn has a tattoo on his arm that is the crest of the Havarna kings, which are the kings that are in power. Claudia mentions Giles in the beginning, that the prince supposedly died. Finn believes that he's from outside. He has vague memories of, I kid you not, a birthday cake with silver balls on it. Kind of weird, but I mean, that's what he remembers from his childhood, so that's okay. But, you know, that's the kind of thing that's a little bit of a luxury item. Maybe hinting at the fact that he comes from a wealthy family. All that was really obvious, and the other 2 weren't as obvious, but at this point I was just kind of like, come on. So number 2, the warden is not Claudia's father. Now, I didn't necessarily see this one coming, but first of all, I don't think it's really a big deal, and second, in hindsight, maybe I should have, because of the way he treats her. I'll get more into what a disgusting slug the warden is in a second, but he says things to Claudia like, I have bred you to be queen, and I have come to love you. So yeah, there's a lot of detachment there. So in hindsight, yeah, it's really not a big surprise that Atia found out that Claudia is not related to the warden, and the fact that she came from inside Incarceron is not really that surprising either. And finally, the 3rd twist. Incarceron is tiny, microscopic. It's not a big fortress under the ground or anything. No, it's literally contained inside a silver cube that hangs from the warden's watch chain. My issue here is really with how they found this one out. Claudia and Jared snuck into the warden's office, and there was a scrap piece of metal lying on the floor. Jared picked it up, and he put it under a microscope sometime later, and found that it was a microscopic zoo. The scrap of metal is not in Incarceron, but it was just lying around. Like, this is just, it was a little too convenient for my taste that the warden just kind of accidentally left a piece of scrap metal there. By the way, that same piece of metal, they sneak into the warden's office 2 times. One is when Claudia is at her house and goes in, and it goes in like through her mansion, and then the second time is when she's in the castle where she's gone to for her wedding, and she sneaks into the basement, finds this gate, and finds out that it also leads to the office. And the warden could have gone in there, and actually had gone in there in between those 2 times, but the piece of scrap metal lying on the ground is what clued her into the fact that it was the same place, and they just happened to pick it up and look at it. That was really kind of stupid. to me. As for Incarceron actually being a microscopic prison, I mean, it makes sense in the world, kind of. They don't ever explain any of the science or any of the magic. I'm not even sure if they have magic in this world. I don't know. But I mean, it makes some kind of logical sense, since no one knows where it is, and the warden's the only one that knows, and all that. So, like, it wasn't necessarily a bad twist. I just thought it was kind of revealed in a bad way. Alright, let's get into the characters and all of their glory. Let's start with the Queen, Sia, and her son, Casper. So I don't have much to say about these two, except that throughout the book, it's kind of, it kind of feels like Sia is going to be the big villain at the end, and, you know, a twist where she was really the one controlling Incarceron or something. I don't know. But, you know, it made it out to feel like she was going to be a big villain, but she really wasn't. At worst, she was mildly irritating and manipulative to Claudia. In the end, they bring Finn out of Incarceron, and the warden, like, opens up, I want to call it a hailing frequency. And basically he broadcasts to the entire Great Hall that Giles has returned, and the Queen had, like, sent him away because she feared for his life, yada yada yada, and so everyone's like, oh, rejoicing, the lost prince has returned to us, yay, and because of that, the Queen's entire plans are all foiled, and she just, like, she goes along with it, smiles and nods, and then says to the warden, I'll never forgive you, and that's, like, her big defeat thing. And it's like, it's lame. And then Casper's just disgusting. He's a disgusting human being. Like, I was supposed to be intrigued by John Arlex, who is the warden, but I'm just disgusted by him, mostly because of his treatment of Claudia. And I have more to say about him. Like, I'll admit, he's the smartest character in the book, which is a little sad, considering it is some certain characters' jobs to be the smart people. And I will get more into that in just a second when I discuss those smart people. But yeah, he's really, really awful. I think that Gildas is possibly the character that I hate the most, because he is so selfish, so manipulative, and so dumb. So dumb. Gildas is a sapient, meaning that he is supposed to be really wise and really smart, but that never, ever really shows up. And I think that's actually a problem with the society in this book. Like, sapients are hereditary, so it's a hereditary position, I should say. So you just assume that if a sapient has a child, the child's going to be a sapient one day and be really smart. I mean, Gildas, I don't have any examples, but the thing is, like, he's never super, like, it's never shown that he's intelligent in the slightest. And for a lot of the journey through Incarceron, I'm just like, why is he there? He literally didn't contribute anything. He possibly saved Atia's life at one point, but that would be about it. Kiro is Finn's oath brother, meaning that they're kind of sworn to protect each other, have each other's backs. But Kiro is awful. He is very vain and mean to everyone that he thinks is beneath him, and he isn't nice to the people around him either. When they're trying to save Atia's life, Finn asks Kiro for one of the rings that Kiro has that supposedly contains a human life. And so Kiro at first refuses to give it up, and so Finn finally threatens him at sword point. And so Kiro finally gives him the ring, and Tia is saved. They escape from the tower that they were in, and then Kiro turns around and punches Finn in the stomach. Like, no joke. He just punches him, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, and Kiro says, Kiro held out a hand and pulled him up, staggering face to face. That'll teach you not to draw a sword on me again, he said. Yeah, he's a charmer. He's a real nice guy. And then another twist was that he's actually what's called a half-man, meaning that part of him is bionic, and it's inside so you can't see it. But, like, that was obvious too, because he went through a metal detector and it went off, and he was like, oh, it's the key that's in my pocket, and Atia's like, but yeah, no, that was not really surprising to me either. And also, like, he has no redemption ever. He never apologizes to anyone. So Atia is actually one of the few characters that I like, and she is the most clever of the group that's trying to escape Incarceron, but also she doesn't get a whole lot of chance to show it. And she's just, like, she feels like the only one of them that has any sense. Also, she has a lot of loyalty to Finn, and I appreciate that. She almost died for him, like, she tasted his food for him, which he didn't like, but because she said she was his servant since he saved her, and the food was poisoned, and they managed to save her. Anyway, I'm kind of going on a tangent. I like her. She's smart. Her backstory is shows that she's clever and will do anything to survive. And yeah, she's fine. Alright. Next is Jared, and I feel like it's almost unfair to say that I like Jared because I didn't see a whole lot of him. Like, he's just kind of very mild-mannered, and soft-spoken. I think a lot of it is that he just didn't annoy me, and also, like, he had a fox cub, and I thought that was just a really cute image of him, like, stroking the fox cub. Here's what gets me, though, is that Jared is also a sapient, and we know that he's pretty clever. Like, he makes devices, he makes kind of fancy machines. He examines the key, and this key, by the way, and learns from it, and at one point he, I guess, actually learns the combination for it. I'll kind of get to that in a second. But he and Claudia, everything they do is known by the warden, John Arlex, Claudia's father. And I feel like that really undermines how smart Jared is supposed to be. Like, he's a scholar, really. He's a scholar, and he's an inventor, but all of their plans are just kind of undermined, and I feel like he should have been able to outwit John Arlex at some point, but it never happens. Alright, Claudia. I liked Claudia at first. I was like, oh, she's kind of free-spirited, like she's climbing a tree and she's not supposed to do that because ladies don't do that. But honestly, she's not that great. none of these characters really have a personality. She's no exception. But, um, really, you see through the other characters describing her as haughty and cold, and you realize that she is, and then, people in Incarceron that she's talking to, um, they they tell her, like, you wouldn't survive in here. You've had everything you ever wanted your entire life. And I had to kind of take a step back and be like, yeah, she's a bit of a spoiled brat. Even if she is willing to, like, endanger herself by sneaking into her father's office and almost getting caught, like, that's not real danger. Not really. So yeah, I don't like her that much. I don't think she's that smart either. None of the nobody is apparently, except for John, and like. And finally, our main man. I've already called him that. Finn. Finn is also pretty flat, and the last mark I have in my book is a moment when he was being incredibly selfish. It's when Atiya is choking on the poison, and let me just read it. Some corrosive. Gildas watched the girl retching and squirming. He stood slowly resigned. There is nothing I can do. There has to be, Finn shoved him aside. I could have eaten that. It could have been me. Like, it could have been me. Hello, she's dying right here. She's dying right in front of you. Just to focus on the problem. He's not really selfish throughout most of the book. Actually, through most of the book, it feels like everyone's using him, including Kiro. Atiya is the only one that I think isn't. Even Claudia is kind of using him because she thinks he's Giles and doesn't want to marry Casper. So, yeah. At one point he's like, do any of you actually care about me, Finn? But it's hard for the reader to care about him, Finn, because Finn doesn't have a personality. His one character trait is that he has visions of the past. Like, just, he doesn't have any likes or dislikes, really. So I want to talk very quickly about the key. I realize it's not a character, but this is the key. There are actually two keys in the book, and there's one that belongs to the warden that Claudius steals from his office, and there's one that they found actually inside of Incarceron, and they talk to each other through the keys, and the key like projects a holographic image, whatever. My problem is that if the key looks anything like what's on the cover, I really have a hard time seeing how it did any of the things that it did. First of all, they described the key as hexagonal, and I'm guessing they're referring to this part. That's not a hexagon. So their hexagonal keyholes would not fit this key, and this is a slight nitpick, and I guess it's just like the cover designer didn't conference with the author or whatever, but it's like, you know, if this is what I'm picturing, I'm having a hard time picturing what's happening in the story because it just doesn't fit. And they describe like buttons on the key. First of all, what key has buttons on it? And yeah, on that note, at some point Jared tells Kiro, as they're talking through the key, a combination to shut off sensors. And so it's never explained how Jared figures that out. And I didn't feel like it was well explained how it worked. Like, Kiro does it when they're fighting the beast, and it's like they have an invisibility cloak around them or something. And I get it. It's like I guess it's like static on the eyes, the cameras that are watching them or something. I don't know. Anyway, I feel like it wasn't well explained. I feel like that was a bit of a hole in the story. And I also feel like how they're communicating through the key was not super well explained either. Like, I don't know. Like, at first it sounded like, I guess there was an image appearing in that tiny little part right there, which, if you can see that, good for you. I don't know. And like, you had to get out, they pressed the button, the eye of the eagle. Like, if you can press that, good for you. You must be tiny. But yeah, no, I really didn't like how the key worked. And also it felt a little bit like a cop-out at the end, because they had this key the entire time and they were searching for a door, and they, in the end you just pressed the key. It was like, what? The magic was inside you all along! Thanks for telling me that earlier, and, making me go through all this stuff. So that's it. That is Incarceron. And as you can tell, I did not like this book. And there is a second one called Safik. And I don't know if it would answer some of the lingering questions I have. It might. But honestly, I don't think I'm gonna read it because I didn't enjoy this one and I don't want to continue on reading from these characters' perspectives. So I'm sorry, that was super negative. There was very little I liked about this book, probably because I thought it was a really cool concept and it just wasn't executed in the way I was expecting or executed well. But for those of you who are like, oh, but if it's middle grade, then you shouldn't be judging it so harshly because the writing's bound to be bad. Well, the writing can be, I don't want to say dumbed down, but it can be more appropriate to a middle school level, like with word choice and everything, but it should still be good, and this just wasn't. And also, I am perfectly entitled to my own opinion, so if I didn't like it, then, that's how I feel, and I have given you evidence for why I feel that way. I try not to be super negative in these reviews. Actually, all the books I've reviewed so far before this one, I've really liked. I may have had a few issues with them, but I overall really liked them. This was the first book in a long time that I've really just severely disliked. And I had to be honest about it. So that's that. I try to post videos every week, so if you like my videos, you can come back and keep watching. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and bye. I'll see you next time.